Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. Interesting week this week I think, although it is still very light on actual information from CCP about the future roadmap for the game. April 12th should be FanFest, so that means we really don't have that much more time to get any information if CCP still wants to give us that stuff before FanFest itself. Now I do understand that they'll have been super busy just preparing for FanFest, preparing for the 15th anniversary, and they probably want to make a pretty hypeful splash there. So I think we'll be in for a couple of interesting weeks now. And I think that the ticker already reflects that a little bit, because we do have some pretty massive movers on the market as well. So let's get in there and let's see what we can find out. First of all, we will start with plex at around 1 minute. There we go. And let's take a look. Plex in JITA itself, 3 million. And the buyers at less than 2.9 million. Now that's JITA itself. Let's take a look at the player-owned trade hubs. First sellers coming in at less than 3 million ISK, although it is 5 jumps out, but even in perimeter, the I Choose You trade hub is also selling Plex for less than 3 million ISK. And the next one for the buyers at less than 2.9 million. So that is pretty much the same here. People are buying, of course, from these player-owned trade hubs up until JITA. So I'm not sure if this buy order, for instance, doesn't provide this. No, this actually will provide Plex in JITA itself. But you can see that everybody is competing at this point, even within JITA, at the same price in order to buy those Plex for less than 2.9 million. And the sellers are willing to sell them for less than 3 million. That is pretty crazy. That is definitely a pretty sharp drop down right here. I'm actually asking you guys the question here: are you making a move on this Plex or not? I think up until FanFest, it's still very risky move, but this could be a really good investment as well. If CCP can bring the hype, if they can bring out some very interesting stuff that might, for instance, require some skill points, you know, like new skill books for some reason, then this could actually be a really nice time to start purchasing those Plex for less than 2.9 million ISK. If we can bring that up on the, yeah, that's 288. So you can probably buy at around this price point, which, if you look at the this chart, seems to be a very good price. Now, if you want my historic perspective on this, and right now I'm not really sure. I still have a lot of Plex that I have myself, so I'm not sure if I want to make an extra investment. This does look a lot like an early version of the usual pattern. The one big difference is that the spike here happened in August and then one in December, rather than straight through November, December for the winter expansion. But that is probably because we had more of a fall expansion with the moon mining stuff. So as a result, this is the regular spike, you could say, around the winter expansion. And then now you have a dip, which would usually only end around May or something like that. So the big question is, again, when will CCP come out with the next big patch? And that could give us an indication as to where the bottom is going to be. But now it's the end of April. No, it's the end of March. April is coming. If this is early and then this bottom is early, then we could actually already be pretty close to that. But previously, I know that I've made one amazing trade on Plex where I really got very lucky. I timed the bottom, but it was in May where I managed to purchase them and then sell them for the winter expansion at a massive profit. So this is my perspective here. Either you make a move before FanFest, and then you take a little bit of the FanFest gamble with that, or you hope that it lasts a little bit longer, even through FanFest, that you, for instance, see some sales during FanFest, and then you could try to really time the actual bottom, depending on the information that CCP gives us. You could also play on both, of course. Try a couple of small purchases at this point, and then try to keep a very close eye on the market during and after FanFest. Which can sometimes yield some very interesting results, although the dev blocks could yield interesting market results as well. Next up, we've got the skill multiple pilot training certificate, continuing the dive down. That's to my surprise. I really thought we wouldn't break through the 1 billion mark just like that, but look at that, heading straight for the 800 million mark now. Sellers coming in at 850 million and the first buyers here at 800 million. This feels extremely cheap to me. It's on even more volume, so let's take a quick look at the plex volumes. Up a little bit, not all too crazy. Maybe there's yet another sale going on here that I didn't get a mail for or something like that. But this is something that we've not had for a very long time. 800 million or 850 million ISK, and you can train a character for 30 days for less than a billion ISK. That is pretty crazy, and if this of course is a bit of a barometer for what's happening with plex, then we are in a serious downtrend, and a little bit of patience might actually be the best move at this point. So very interesting, but I'm getting the feeling here that there's lots of movements happening on the market as well, preparations basically for what CCP might announce. For the skill extractors, we'll have a very similar chart to plex, but where they used to cost like 350 to 380 million ISK, we're now down to 330 million ISK. 330 for the sellers, 318 for the buyers. So if you want some cheaper skill extractors compared to the last 6 to 8 months here, then you can also look for those buy orders, I would say. Any impact on the skill injectors here? That to me is very interesting. Here are the large skill injectors. They are under pressure, but you don't see the same impact from the lower plex prices that you see in skill extractors here. There's much more hesitation on this market, and we are below 800 million ISK, but not by too much. Sellers at 800 million, buyers at 780 million ISK. This does mean, in my opinion, a very strong demand for skill points. People are still creating those best types of characters. Maybe there's alpha clones that want to just fill up their slots so that they can get in the Vexor Navy issue, get in the Gila. All of that stuff is now accessible to them. But this to me indicates very strong demand still for skill points. Maybe some investments in skill injectors as well. If CCP does come out with like a new line of skilling, then they will of course increase in value quite massively. For the small skill injector, we do have that drop down, but look at the market recovering quite quickly on big volume. So once we broke 160 million ISK, the investors came out here and started buying up those skill injectors, driving the sell prices normally back above to 162 million, bars at 156 million. Again, showing that demand for skill points, that is definitely something that's in vogue, and I'm seeing this as an investor move on the sharper drop off of small skill injectors compared to the large skill injectors. And then finally we have the daily alpha skill injector, which shouldn't move all that much unless there's a massive sale happening or something like that, and it's not. 57.4 million for the sellers, 55 million for the buyers here. Definitely a pretty flat chart. I think as we get to a full 1 year chart, this will look extremely flat, which is normal when it comes to an item that is sold directly by CCP. Next up we have the minerals, that is at 830. There we go, and well, we already saw that it's not good news for titanium. All the gains that we made last week are already lost. We are heading back for less than 5 ISK here on increased volume, so some massive dumping happening when they could sell at 5.5 ISK. Some of the people holding those stocks were definitely willing to dump everything on the market just to get into liquid ISK, which for the plex market is very similar. Of course, people are selling plex like crazy, willing to sell them for less than 3 million ISK. That does mean that people want to get into liquid ISK at this point. 5 ISK 2 cents for the sellers, and the buyers coming in at 4.99. The margin is gone, so the market does try to support 5 ISK a little bit, but this is definitely a pretty sharp drop off right here, and quite unfortunate for the people that like to mine, of course, because our efficiency just went down quite a little bit. Next up, we've got Pyrite continuing the slow descent to ever lower low points. That is definitely, again, pretty crazy and not good news for the mineral market. 442 for the sellers, 440 for the buyers. We are trying to find that bottom, but as you can see, every time we jump back up, there's volumes coming in that drive the price ever lower. That is definitely a very bad situation if you're mining or if this is your core business. Next up, we have Mixelon that, well, did alright to get to 80 ISK, has to give a little bit of ground here. The 20-day moving average is still on the uptrend, but I think it will stop at this point. Still, if we can defend 75 ISK, at least there's something good to grab when it comes to, oh, and I should really put out that filter here. Something good to grab when it comes to mining in HISEC. So we're still at 76.78 for the sellers of Mixelon, which is not bad, and 74.85 for the buyers as well. So obviously, as we say every week here, Mixelon should be your focus if you are mining in HISEC. Next up here we've got Isogen that just like Pyrite just continues to go ever lower. I mean, I'm really surprised we are going to get close to 30 ISK at this point on increased volumes again, so people are still dumping more minerals on the market. 31.89 for the first seller and the first buyer coming in at 31.31. So Isogen might just land around 30 ISK, which is definitely an all-time low in my experience, and this is not a great chart. Now, for the very long term, this might be a very good investment, of course. Who the hell is investing in Isogen when stuff like this is happening? Volume still 83 million here, 40 million. I mean, this is still hundreds of millions that are now being sold for less than 33 ISK. It's still just coming in because of the massive oversupply from Nullsec. Who knows, at some point CCP, you know, a chart like this and a chart like this really doesn't show a too healthy an economy. It shows a complete decline in the value of anyone that creates Isogen in the game. And so at some point CCP might actually intervene here. That will make a good investment, but it remains a very long-term affair and a pretty risky affair as well, because you might have thought the same thing here when we were going down to 40 ISK, and then you might have thought the same thing when we were going down to 35 ISK, and you'd still be holding that Isogen, and right now you can stock up at almost 30 ISK. So yeah, it's up to you, of course, to decide what you want to do with your ISK. To me, for the very long term, this might be interesting, but my tactic here is not to invest extra ISK in the market, but actually to hold the Isogen that I mine myself, bring it all to Cheetah and have it ready for the longer term, just in case CCP does intervene. When it comes to Noxium next, managing to hold that 300 to 325 band, so it's not as dramatic as Isogen or Pyrite, but it's still pretty damn bad. Noxium selling for 309 ISK and the buyers coming in at 304 ISK is really pretty cheap as well, historically speaking. Then for Nullsec / 0.5 systems these days, of course, here is Zydrine continuing a decline as well, finding a bit of a support here at 700 ISK, but again, very bad news because the first sellers are coming in at 698 and the buyers at 680. This is the impact of moon mining, definitely a massive decline in the value of the minerals across the board, almost across the board, you should say. So Zydrine going for less than 700 ISK. Again, same pattern here as with Isogen. You know, you could have thought, well, 1000 ISK, those used to be decent investments once we got below that, because we managed to push up to 1200 from time to time. But now it's just straight down to a new price point that needs to be found with all that extra supply that's coming now from HISEC sources. And finally, we also have Megasite, very same pattern now, heading straight for 800 ISK on that one, 807, 808 for the sellers, sorry, and 794 for the buyers. Again, 1 year lows, probably close to all-time lows. I mean, perhaps before my time there was some Megasite decline to an even lower price, something like that is possible, but this definitely feels like very close to all-time low prices. And then finally we also have Morphite that is holding above 9000 ISK, but you can see the pressure on this one as well. Increased volumes, decreased prices does mean very big supplies coming in here. 9300 for the sellers, and the buyers are first coming in here at 8960, so for less than 9000 ISK you can start to stock up on your Morphite. If this is your go-to go-to investment, which in the last year has been pretty damn good, right? Buy for less than 9,000, sell for 12k, and then another opportunity, buy for less than 8,000 almost, and sell again for 11 to 12,000 ISK if you were lucky on that one. But right now you can buy them again for less than 9,000 ISK. You might want to like start your investment if that's where you like to put your ISK. Next up, we have our PI category at 15 minutes. There we go. Let's go over these. I find this very, very interesting. There's always the theory or the sword of Damocles of CSM leaks and things like that. But there is also just the general words that CCP has spoken in the past. And one of those is that we know that there is still the faction citadels that are in the works. Normally those won't cost anything to actually produce, right? The nullsec alliances that own an outpost will just get a faction citadel instead once that is pushed out. But we also know that if there's something that they're still developing, it's more structures. So stuff like let's see here, what was it called? Some sort of informational array for nullsec that might do stuff to local or might hide or show some extra information depending on whether or not you're attacking or owning that space. So we know that there's more structures in the works, and if the market is preparing for whatever comes for FanFest, I feel like it's actually normal that the broadcast nodes, for instance, are going back above 2.25 million, above its normal average, because if there's one thing that you might want to invest for at this point, it would be another set of structures coming in the future. And so the broadcast nodes are back above 2.25 million, the buyers are at 2.1 million. You're paying a bit of a premium, and I think it's mostly speculation on more structures coming out. We also know that the Stargates are something that's on the long-term roadmap. We don't have an actual date for that, but that's the eventual goal for CCP, is that we'll be able to create our own Stargates and then eventually, probably, that's speculation of course, find our way to Jove space. Next up we have the construction blocks. That's a very nice increase in price here for construction blocks after selling for around 12,000 ISK. The first one was a little bit of a teaser to 13,000 ISK, and construction blocks are now selling for 15,000 ISK, showing that while the market is not that easy because of the fuel block problems, there is still some very nice trade potential in this market. Consumer electronics next, staying at a pretty high point, but definitely being under pressure here at the tail end. Maybe enough people are switching from producing other stuff to consumer electronics. After 3 months almost of 15,000 ISK prices, we are finally breaking through that. Yeah, 14,500 for the first one, 14,900 for most of them, and 14,500 to 250 for the buyers. So consumer electronics, after a couple of very strong months, is showing first signs of some sustained pressure. Next up we've got coolants. That's the fuel stuff that just remains some pretty bad, in a pretty bad spot here for 8 to 9,000 ISK. There's really not much to say. 9,124 for the sellers, 8,700 for the buyers. Decent margin, I would almost say, but yeah, it's just stable at pretty low prices here. Enriched uranium tried to crawl out of that hole. Managed to do so a little bit. Basically, we're going to start to sell at around 11,000 ISK for these guys. Yeah, 11,400 for the sellers, 11,000 for the buyers. That's basically the new average that you have to give for these goods, whereas coolants used to be 11 to 12,000 ISK would be an actual average price here. Enriched uranium probably even more than that, 14, 15k should have been easily possible. They're just moving at a new average because of the lower consumption costs. Next up, integrity response drones. In my opinion, same pattern, right? We try to go back to that average 2.5 million. Don't really manage to do so, and actually we're going up at the tail end here. Sellers coming in at 3 million, almost 3.1 million. Buyers at 2,750,000. And I'm personally seeing this as, if there's anything that's logical to prepare for at this point, it is for another structure. And so these purchases, these increases in price, while they are unfortunate for anyone that currently still wants to make like a refinery or something like that, I feel like it's a very natural reaction to the lack of information that CCP is giving us at the moment. They're driving up the hype, gotta say. I am really curious as to what's coming out for FanFest and the 15th anniversary. anniversary. Mechanical parts next, continuing the slow burn at less than 9,000 ISK. Yep, sellers also below 9,000 ISK here, so that's fuel related again. Nuclear reactors, nice little drop off here. Would be bad news for people that are still looking to sell, but you had almost a month here of opportunity to sell for more than 130,000 ISK here, and we're dropping right off to 100,000 ISK. Buyers are 101. That's unfortunate, but nuclear reactors is one of those specialized planetary materials that was added on viewer request, and one of the best requests that I've ever had, because it has this pattern of dipping below 100,000 ISK, going well above that. So here we've got 130 down to 85, up to 130 again, a second leg up to 180, but then look at that, nicely down to 88,000 ISK. Then meandering a little bit, but managing to go up to 130. So anything here, you had 2 months to purchase the cheapest nuclear reactors, and now you had a month to sell it at 130,000. And here we're finally dropping off again. I would like to see these buyers go to those 92,000 ISK. Then you've got this no-brain investment, nuclear reactors, decent volatility, several sell opportunities across the year, and a very clear pattern, which is what I personally like. Buy for less than 100k on the chart, sell for 130k on the chart. There you go, you're making some ISK on PI. Robotics next, managing to stay above 100,000 ISK, which is not bad for a fuel-related PI material. So 102 for the sellers, 97 for the buyers. These are very stable though. Just I think because of the lack of demand, they have stabilized, because just the general supply is a little bit too much to create volatility. Self-harmonizing power cores, one that goes against the grain here during a whole month, selling for 2.5 million, going back closer to 2 million here. So 2.2 million for the sellers, but 2.1 million for the buyers, so still a touch above average. But if you're still looking for that investment related to a structure, then self-harmonizing power cores does look like it might be one where a couple buy opportunities still exist. Superconductors next, lovely little volatile period here as well, from 11,000 ISK to currently selling for 13,800 ISK. Not a great trade, but definitely one that's okay, and selling above average. Buyers are coming in at 13,200 as well, so superconductors well above average here. Test cultures next, also going up in price, so this is quite surprising. I have made a test culture trade before, but it took almost a year. It took a spike due to structures to actually make it worth it. And here, all of a sudden, we are dipping to 7,400, and now here we've got median daily price of almost 10,000 ISK. So some more volatility in test cultures is quite surprising, but quite welcome. 9,800 for the sellers, 9,500 for the buyers. A slight sell opportunity if you manage to pick up the cheapest test cultures on this chart. I would say less than 7,500, something like that. And finally, we have the wetware mainframes that you can see here at the tail end are also still going up in price and selling for 2.7 million, buyers at 2.5 million. Strong demand for these PI materials, plus, in my opinion, a little bit of speculation on what might come out at FanFest. Next up, we have our Tech 1 chips at 23 minutes. Man, nice round minutes here. Let's get through these, but we all know that the minerals are under pressure now, pretty much across the board. The only outlier really seems to be Mexalon, that is still holding strong because of the nullsec demand, and as a result I think that most chips will be under pressure. Here is the apocalypse after the arms race event that saw hundreds, if not thousands, yeah, probably thousands of battleships come to the market all of a sudden. That increase in price, which needed to get back to like 150 million to be back on the previous average, is being stalled here at the tail end. So we're not going up in price anymore. 142 million for the first seller, 144 for most of them, and then 135 million for the buyers. So here we can, I think, see the first effect of these lower mineral prices. We are going to settle down at a price range that's lower than before the arms race event. Caracal next, staying below 10 million ISK, still around its average, selling for 9.9 million, buyers at 9.1 million. So not seeing that mineral market in here just yet, but here is the catalyst going for less than 1.25 million. Now, that is obviously also a little bit related to the end of Burn Jita. Next up here we get the Drake. We should start to see that here, and yeah, so here is the arms race event. Managed a really nice comeback up to 50 million ISK on the Drake. I think this was related to an event where the Drake's kinetic, current event, right, the hunt, where the kinetic damage and the kinetic shields, does it have special kinetic shield resistance? Let's see here, shields. A little bit, you know, shields, a little bit of thermal, a little bit of kinetic, really good for the current pirates. So showed a little bit of extra interest here, but it can't hold on anymore, and we're dipping back below 45 million ISK. Yeah, 44 million for the sellers, 40 million for the buyers. So there, I think, is the end of the hype and the impact of the minerals. Ferox next, again also definitely trading at a lower, well no, not necessarily a lower average, but definitely at a pretty low average when it comes to these bottoms here. Let's see what we're selling at, 51 million, respectable, and 45 million for the buyers as well. Next up here we've got the Hurricane, flat at 45 million. So here again you can see here the average of this of the last 4 months or so is definitely lower than the average in the first part of the year. The Megatron, after doing really well again, here is the arms race dip, managed to get back to 150 million. Still never really reached that previous average, and look at the tail end here. We have to give room because of the cheaper minerals at the moment, selling for less than 150, bars at 132 million. The Oracle still going strong, selling for 80 million. Not exactly sure what's happening here. Perhaps some Oracle fleets roaming around in Nalsik or something like that, but still selling for 80 million, 69.4 for the buyers. The Raven, here again, arms race event, managed that comeback, is still within the normal trade range, you could say, from the entire year. That's quite impressive, actually, 150 to 160 million ISK, but I think we'll start to get under pressure at this point. 161 for the sellers, 150 for the buyers. I think you get a nice profit at this price when it comes to construction costs of a Raven at current mineral prices. So I'm seeing pressure on the horizon, to be honest. Pressure like this one, like the Retriever, going well below the 22.5 million ISK now, selling for 21, buyers at 19.2 million, which is below the entire chart here. Tempest next, nice little comeback, and I am actually impressed that these battleships managed to get back to the 150, 160 trade range here, 159 for the sellers for the Tempest, despite the pressure from the minerals, but I don't think it's gonna last. The Thrasher next, that one is going down to a 1-year low point, or pretty close to that, selling for less than a million, no, selling for just about a million, but the buyers coming in at 900,000 ISK. That is definitely a little bit cheaper than during Bernjita. Tornado next, holding at an average 65 million ISK, so there's not much to say there except that it looks like the mineral decrease in price is not showing up just across the board just yet, but I think that it will in the upcoming weeks if the trend continues. 500,000 ISK for the Tristan, around average. Venture next, managing to still stay in the 2 to 250 trade range, and then finally we have the Vexor going back above 10 million, but for how long? First sellers coming in at 10.2 million, buyers at 9.3 million here. So alright, to my surprise, many of these Tech 1 ships are managing in average price. Some of them are showing signs of that pressure, like the Drake right here, but the Ferox is still strong. Many of the battleships, the Oracle is still strong. That's a little bit surprising to me, but we also know from experience that there's always a little bit of a lag between decreased price of minerals and this showing up in the Tech 1 market there, because of course minerals need to be shipped, stuff needs to be produced and then brought to the market. So as a result, I do see more Tech 1 pressure on the horizon. Next up we have the Tech 2 market at 2840. There we go. So here someone asked why I have so much interest in Tech 2 prices going even lower, which, you know, might be a little bit counterintuitive indeed. Do we want the entire EVE Online market to depress? Minerals are down plex are down, PI for fuels are down, Tech 1 ships, I'm not really seeing a massive comeback here. Maybe we could see Tech 2 as a boon, that at least there's something where the ISK is flowing towards. But for me, this is just from an old perspective. Before the changes to moon mining, I knew exactly where to look for the buy opportunities, at which price ranges to look for the buy opportunities when it comes to these Tech 2 ships, especially for the frigates. I really knew quite a lot of these, and I managed to easily make trades without having to put in too much effort. Now all of that information is gone, and so I have to speculate a little bit on where will I find that new trade range. Where will I know, yeah, this is basically a no-brainer to purchase these on a couple of lost nullsec fleets. I'm going to make money on this trade. That is something that I don't know yet, and I don't think that below 30 million, like here at 28 million for the Ares, is that point just yet. I personally think that we could go lower, that we still need to see the full potential of the market when it comes to the production of the Tech 2 stuff, the new ways to produce these potentially. Maybe the faction citadels could still have an impact. I mean, I still think that we could go lower. So at the moment, I'm basically not trading actively in the Tech 2 ships, just because I always feel like I might be holding the bag if I would be purchasing at this point for later down the line. And so the pattern that I'm seeing here are that the peaks are still on a descending pattern. It's just that the lower ends here are still stalling. Once we get to 25 million, if we could get to below 25 million and then see the spikes up that we used to see in the Tech 2 market, that would basically be my speculative expectation for the future. But that is why I have this focus a little bit on trying to find that actual pattern and seeing if Tech 2 does indeed want to trade or has the potential to trade at a price range that I would personally expect it to when it comes to the whole cycle. So here is the Ares. Is it staying below 30 million? Nope, sellers are back at 30 million, buyers though at 25.6 million. So I'm hoping that we can actually at some point see those buyers go below that and have that become my no-brain investment trade range here. And well, you know, considering this entire pattern, give it like another month or so, and maybe we might see the buyers finally dip below that. That's where I would personally start to maybe put some more ISK, again in the Tech 2 market. Here's the Cerberus. This is probably again related to the hunt, because it's a great ship for the hunt. You already saw what the Onyx can do. I think that the Cerberus has a similar resistance pattern when it comes to shield. Yeah, 80% for thermal, 70% innate for kinetic. Absolutely perfect for the hunt. This is going to be even better than the Onyx when it comes to running those sites. That's where the interest comes from, and that's why you are paying 300 million for a Cerberus at the moment. Next up here, we've got the Claw, staying at and around 30 million. Where are the buyers at? 27 million. So to me, still a little bit early. But seeing sellers below 30 million sustainably for a little bit. Again, the lower peaks. Now we need to see those bottoms start to drop off. Next up here, we got the Crow, staying well above 30 million at this point. So this one is maybe belying me, unless my next drop off here can actually break 27.5, for instance. That is the pattern that I would be looking for. 32 for the sellers, 28 for the buyers. Next up here, we've got the Crusader. Managed to stay below 30 million for quite a while. Unfortunately, another spike up right here. So on an empty market though, on an empty market, we still have someone selling Crusaders for less than 30 million ISK. So interesting. Next up, we've got the Heretic, an Interdictor. A bit more interest all of a sudden, going back above 80 million ISK, 90 million for the sellers, 74 for the buyers. Next up here, we got the Hound, and that is not good news for my speculative scenario, you could say. After staying below 30 million for quite a bit, we are now selling Hounds for 36 million ISK. Buyers are at 29 million ISK. So here we never really got to a buy opportunity where I said, yeah, that's one where I would even make a jump on this one. No, we continuously played with the same low prices of just below 30 million ISK that we've seen before, and then here we do all of a sudden see a spike up to 36 million ISK. That's a small trade that you could definitely have made, but to me it still feels like a big risk that you'll end up holding the bag. Next up, we've got the Ishtar, also up a little bit, selling for 294 million to 34 for the buyers. Let's take a look at the Manticore here, staying around 35 million. Manticore has always been more expensive than the other bombers. It's 37 for the sellers and 31.7 for the buyers. Maybe if we count this spike, and this has hopefully the higher spike for the foreseeable future, then perhaps it could still happen. Here's the Nemesis though. What I do like for the Nemesis is that we had this buy opportunity at 24 million. I didn't make a move on that, but this is where I would say, yes, probably this is a no-brain buy opportunity. And it turned out that it was, because you could have bought them for 24 to 25 million, and now you're selling them for 32 million. That's the kind of trade that I'm personally looking for. And for the very first time here, we saw the Nemesis show the pattern. Will it show up a little bit more often and a little bit more reliably across these frigates? That's basically what I'm looking for. But this was a very nice drop down to less than 25 million on the chart. That was definitely a small buy opportunity that you could have made some ISK if we look at where we're now. Pontifex now going up again to more than 100 million. Yeah, 99 million basically for the sellers. Ouch. It's basically a lack of supply still in these ships. The Purifier though going back down in price after breaking 35 million, so spike a little bit lower and a little bit lower. The question is, will we finally be able to see a chart head for 25 million? 31.4 for the sellers, 26.5 for the buyers. Starting to get there. Come on guys, we can do this. We've got the Raptor next, landing at 30 million. Wanting to go lower, maybe buyers 28, sellers a decent amount of them at 31.3. Could go a bit lower here. Next up we've got the Saber, stable at 70 million, sellers at 70 million. Okay. Then the Stiletto next, let's take a look at that. Just meandering around 30 million. At least we're not seeing spikes back up to 35 to 40 million at this point, but 31 for the sellers, 28.2 for the buyers. Supply wise this looks okay, but nothing too crazy. Could still go either way. The Stork, ooh, heading back for a 1-year high point here, selling for 120 million ISK and 90 million for the buyers. And then finally we've got the Tyrannis as well, staying below 30 million here again, playing with 25 million. This is the sort of the pattern that I want to see, so let's hope that we can actually go down a little bit more in the Tyrannis. 29 for the sellers, 24 million for the buyers. You are actually buying Tyrannis for less than 25 million. To me, this does look pretty interesting potentially. This is the pattern that I'm personally looking for here. Buyers below 25 million. Have that chart go a little bit lower so that that chart gets to less than 25 million. You've got that no-brain buy opportunity. And I think we might see Tyrannis at like 22 to 23 million on the buyer side of things. That's where you know, yeah, okay, we'll buy that, because at some point we might reach 30 million again on some action or something like that in nullsec. So there you go, that's my Tech 2 story. That's what I'm looking for personally. It might never really happen, but then I would need to see a pattern come back a little bit more often that becomes more reliable. Right now across the board you've got really weird stuff happening, like very stable claws, and then the Crow here staying well above 30 million all of a sudden. Why is this Interceptor staying above 30 million? The Crusader here all of a sudden, you know, going back up here, never really showing that volatility that we want to see in the Tech 2 market to actively trade in there. So we need to see the pattern show back up, or we need to see those buy opportunities clearly form, like what happened with the Tyrannis and like what happened with the Nemesis here. So that's basically the analysis that I want to see, that I want to make in the Tech 2 market at the moment, before I jump in and start telling you guys, you know what, yeah, I'm definitely buying a couple of this ship at this point. Next up we have the Tech 3 market at 38.15. And you probably already saw from the ticker that the Tengu made a pretty big move. So that's to my surprise, because we were starting to see more and more signs of oversupply across the board. So let's see what's happening here. The Confessor jumping back up a little bit. You had a small buy opportunity at 34 million ISK. Now selling for 37.5 million, 36 million for the buyer. So nothing too crazy, because we still have like a couple hundred right here that are in the pipeline. So slight jump up, a slight buy opportunity. Maybe it's past that 34 million is, but you can still buy them pretty cheaply. Question is, do you think that more of this type of supply is going to come to the market or not? But yeah, still pretty low, I would say below the yearly average, and with pretty big supplies here. The Hecate continuing the downtrend, heading towards 30 million, almost 35 million for the sellers, 32.1 for the buyers. Lack of buyers. I love the Hecate here, but I think I said the same thing last week. So again, never really like put all your ISK in on a single downtrended chart, but a couple of Hecates at this point to me make a lot of sense, way more sense than any of the Tech 2 ships here. If you can purchase some at like 33 million ISK for the Hecate, look at this entire chart here, 33 million is around here. On a nullsec activity, you will sell those for a profit. The Jackdaw next, that one is hesitating, managed to go to 35 million, jumping back up a little bit. Let's take a look at the supply numbers here, 46, 75, 57, 28, another 50 coming in here. It's quite a few of them, not as drastic, not hundreds of them coming in on a single order, but pressure is on from 40 million down to 39,999, and then the buyers coming in at 37 million, not as clear cut as the Hecate, but obviously still reeling from a lot of supply. And then finally, we've got this Vepel that is also breaking 40 million on the downtrend. This could be interesting as well. 36 million for the sellers. And this is what I was a little bit afraid of. 141, 120. And then we've got 410 Vepels coming in at 36 million. And the buyers are still at 35.2 million. That's a little bit unfortunate. If we'd see the buyers in the same situation as the Hecate buyers, that's when I would say, yeah, you could also invest in this Vepels a little bit. So this week, Hecate looks pretty interesting to jump in on because of this, of course. That's another 500-600 coming in right there. And yeah, that's oversupply. This Vepel, that's pretty big oversupply as well. On the Jackdaw, it's not as bad, and on the Confessor, it's not that bad either. So yeah, interesting situation to see a little bit of a comeback in some of these, despite still the vibe here in the destroyers that we are getting into a pretty serious oversupply situation. For the cruisers, here's the Legion, pretty stable, 140 million still here, couple hundred coming in as well, 128 million for the buyers. So again, really big supply here, and actual stable prices at, you could say, a lower average from most of last year. The Loki next, let's take a look at those numbers here. 195 for the sellers, is 420 on the market here, 183 million for the buyers. I would say that's a decent gap. Again, that's opening up. If anyone is producing Lokis at the moment, they are going to start competing at a price lower than 195. Proteus next, actually up a little bit in price. That's quite surprising, I must say. 140 million, 187 of them coming in though. 128 for the buyers, again decent margin, like 10%, starting to show up here. The volumes for the Proteus are abysmal though. And then next up we've got Tengu. That is selling for 170, and it's still not showing up on the chart, and there's already sell orders coming in below that. That is really weird, that we still have the chart here at 140 million. So it must have like just happened last night or something like that, because unless there's like a big market showing up here, this is 145, so maybe people are, but it's, I don't know. Last week there were definitely Tengus selling for 145 million here in Jita, so all of those must be gone. Not really seeing them relisted here or anything like that. They're selling for 170. Not seeing a big volume spike or anything like that either, but kind of weird that all of a sudden we don't have the oversupply in the Tengu here. We actually lack them a little bit. So maybe like just before I started Eve Talk, someone came in, purchased a lot of Tengus up to like 170 or something like that, and that it has yet to show up on the chart, because this should go up by next week here. Kind of a weird one. Don't know what to tell you guys. All of a sudden, lots of Tengus missing in Jita 4.4. And then for the extra product this week at 43.30, we're going to take a look at the faction frigates again. At this point, I am interested in where is the ISK going. It's not going in minerals, it's going a bit in PI, sure, but it's not going in Tech 1 ships, not going in Tech 3 ships. I'm not really seeing that. There's definitely lots of ISK that needs to be invested if you want a Tech 2 ship, but is there anything else, like maybe the faction ships? So let's take a look at the faction frigates this week. Let's start with the pirate ones. Those tend to be quite interesting and not really tied too much to what's happening in faction warfare. So here is the Astero actually heading at for around a 1-year low point at this point. That's to my surprise. I thought maybe lots of these would be more expensive. Astero selling for 56 million, bars at 52 million. You can see that they have sold for 70 million earlier on in this year. So this is quite surprising. The Astero 1-year low point. So if you want a couple of these lovely little exploration frigates, definitely a good time to buy them. What's the Cruer doing? The Cruer is at a 1-year high point and by quite a significant margin. Usually trading for less than 50 million ISK. We're now selling these puppies for 71 million. Nobody's supplying these at the moment. 58.5 million for the buyers. That's a lovely high point, and so if you have some of these lying around for some reason, maybe you purchase them for less than 45 million ISK. Great sell opportunity here, very interesting. Next up here we get the Daredevil. I'd put it above average, coming from a 1-year high point though, so that's not bad. Low points are like 50 to 55 million, currently selling for 64 million, buyers at 59 million, definitely pretty respectable, quite expensive, and actually a healthy looking supply demand situation there. The Dramiel next, working its way above its average, 42 to 45 million on average, currently selling for 45.5 million and 42.2 million for the buyer. So I would say we've got more supply here, a decent amount, and we're back on the average. Maybe this here, increased volume, the drive to just above average is because of the new skin. Can we take a look at that? Serial Flames. Yeah, look at that. That does look pretty damn amazing. Increased interest in the Dramiel a little bit, but nothing too crazy on the price front. The Garmer, this is a very big surprise, actually heading way down to 1-year low. Look at this potential for a trade here. Buy at 50, sell at 65, buy at 55, sell at 70, no, let's say 65 again, and now we are again selling them for 51.5 million, buyers at 48 million ISK. Garmers at a very low point, very interesting. I'd say this chart makes this investment worthy. The Succubus next, also slowly just working its way above average to a little bit above 50 million ISK, 52.7 for the sellers, 49 million for the buyers. Nothing too crazy. And then we've got the Worm selling for an average price, I would say, around 55 million probably. Yeah, 56 for the sellers, 51 for the buyers. So quite interesting. I like where the Garm is at if you want to make a bit of a speculative buy here. I like this a lot more than what we're seeing in the Tech 2 market at the moment, for instance. And then the Astero as well. So if you ever want to like use these, then it becomes almost a no-brainer to buy a couple of Garmers or to buy a couple of Asteros. Oh man, this Garmer just looks so good. Crazy. I don't think I've actually ever even flown a Garmer, so I'm actually heading for Jita and I'm gonna buy one. Skin wise, don't like that too much. Don't like this body pattern, this camo pattern. Don't think it fits on spaceships that much. But pure reds, that's pretty cool. And the conversions, that's definitely cool as well. So yeah, if you ever want to fly a Garmer, definitely head there now, because you're picking some up at a pretty cheap price. We'll also take a look at the Navy factions. Here is the Caldari Navy Hookbill. I've read some really good stuff about Caldari faction warfare at the moment. So it's pretty normal that these are actually at a low price point here. Look at that, currently selling for 13.5 million, buyers at 12 million and 25 million earlier in the year. How is that for a nice swing, a nice trade swing? God damn, faction frigates, not bad. Then this should be the exact opposite, and it is Federation Navy Comet. After being around 12 to 13 million in February, is now shooting up in price, selling for 18 million. ISK buyers are at 15 million as well. A nice little trade that could have been made here if you were in the know. about what's happening in faction warfare, like Market Dragon. That's maybe again one of those long-term projects. At some point I might do some nullsec, but at some point I might want to do some faction warfare as well. Do I want to create some alpha clones for that or something like that? Perhaps. It's all definitely also a matter of time. But this is another project here. You know, if you want to make these trades actively, the best way to go about this is to have some characters in faction warfare, so you know exactly what's happening there. You can maybe even predict when one of the factions is going to come out strong, like the Kaldari at the moment, and then you can time your investments in them and you can time your sales as well. Imperial Navy Slicer also at a pretty low point, so Amar Kaldari winning out at the moment, I would say, selling for 15.5 million. And then the Republic Fleet Firetail is actually selling at a pretty high price at the moment. Crucifier also 1 year low point, and then we've got the Griffin, which is also obviously down in price in the last couple of months as the Kaldari have strengthened. And then we should see the exact opposite for the Molus. Well, it's not moving that much here. Maybe it's just not that popular if you're looking at the volumes. And then the Vigil fleet issue also pretty stable. But look at the Kaldari Navy Hookbill, look at that Federation Navy Comet. Those are obviously the moves that we want to see. Yeah, another one of those longer term EVE Online projects that I might start to do at some point. I really can't give you guys like a horizon on when I want to do that, but these are still things, you know. It's very important in EVE Online that you give yourself goals, that you give yourself stuff to do, both for the short term, the medium term and the long term. And nullsec and faction warfare are two of my long term plans that if I feel completely lost, if I feel like I'm really not having fun with what I'm doing at the moment in EVE Online, which is at the moment detail, maintenance, or exploration, stuff like that, then that is something that I'll definitely switch to at some point. But right now, short term, it's for me, it's missiles and shield training, getting into the golem. Medium term, it's, well, CCP, come out with information. Let's hope for some information-full weeks here up to FanFest. It should be really interesting, and that might create a medium-term goal. And then longer term, we'll see, but I definitely still have options there as well. So there you go, guys. That is this week's EVE Talk. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.